Hi, I'm Bill Nichols. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission here in Littleton, New Hampshire. I'm in charge of the trails. We have 3 different areas that we maintain. Pine Hill is where we're going to be today, and then Bob O'Connor will show you the Dells and also Kilburn Craigs later on. But right now we're going to start with a little explanation of the trails on Pine Hill. The lovely part about Pine Hill trails is that they're very close to town, and anybody that was downtown could get to them very easily. They're several blocks up the hill past the school, or up Pleasant Street or Jackson Street, and you come right to the base of the trail system, which starts right next to Remick Park. So if you get on Pine Hill Road, you'll see across the street from the park the sign that gets you on our trail system, and that starts right below me. That trail goes right down to Remick Park, so anyone starting there will continue on from here and we'll go up the hill so that you'll find out where you're going to go. This trail is a new section of trail that was relocated from the old trail. If you can see it on the right hand side just past me, and that was in muddy times or slippery times in the winter, very hard to get up and down because it got icy and muddy. So we changed the location a little bit to the left side trail, and that traverses up in a more gradual way and keeps people on the trail from sliding to their death. So that's a new trail that I just designed several years ago, copied after a trail that I had hiked on in Switzerland. And so I figured it went so well there. I was amazed at how well it worked. We sort of copied it and made it the same type of trail in this area. So let's go on up the trail and we'll see how wonderful it gets. We just changed from a gradual incline trail to a steeper part of the section that we had to put steps in. So these rock steps will now become the way we get up the hill rather than just a slab up the hill from the last part of the trail. So if you'll follow me, we'll try on. We were just discussing the fact that we came up the hill on this little trail and had to go through a hole in the stone wall. And here we are in the middle of woods, and people are astounded at why these stone walls are in the middle of the woods. Well, I can tell you, because I know, over 100 years ago, this used to be a pasture land. And it was called Wetherell's, I think it was Mrs. Wetherell's pasture. And this whole hill had no timber on it at all. It was all open space, and you could stand on a high ground and look all the way to Franconia Notch without anything in your way. So you can see in 100 years or more that what's grown up. These big oak trees are at least that old, and so therefore the woods are now taking over, but the stone walls are still here. So we can come up through the woods and enjoy them. They're sort of neat. If you can imagine the work that the farmers used to go through to put these stones in place and make a wall and keep their cows in their pasture land, that's a job that I think we wouldn't know how to do nowadays. Okay, we can go on. You may notice as we go along the little tin tops that we've had to put up in the trees to mark the trail. Unfortunately, last year we had a lady get lost on this trail, and so we decided as a commission to mark them better. So from one tin top to another you ought to be able to see, so that if you see the next one you'll know which way to go. We hope no one gets lost anymore. The kiosks that you see, we'll pass 3 more on our way around the loop here, was put up by the science department in Littleton High School. The children that worked in the shop put up the framework, and the artwork was done by their department there. And it's a very educational little sign that tells you forest ecology and what grows underneath our feet and the animals underneath the ground and water courses and things like that. So they're very good for people who want to know more about the forest. It's a good clue, and if anyone ever gets confused, if they would only just look at the ground, you can see the indentation where people have walked, and it's depression, and that's what we call the footpath. I designed this path to go past all the glacier erratics that are commonly passed if you're going to the summit of the mountain. This happens to be one. This great big rock was put here by the glacier, and as it melted, it left this big rock here, and we'll see others along the way as we pass them. The summit boulder being another one, which is even a lot bigger than this one. But over 10,000 years ago, this glacier came through here. It was a mile high of ice, and it brought stones from higher in the Quebec area all the way down. We were finding stones that don't belong here, sitting on top of the ground, which are brought by the glacier from a long way away. So it's sort of a neat thing to do, is to take a cruise around the boulder fields, as we say. We've just come to the right-of-way for the power line to the WLTN's radio antenna. It comes over from School Street up over this hill and down the other side. Well, last year one of these trees fell over on that wire and caused a fire, and the forest started burning underneath it, and it burned for all day and a night before anybody realized what had happened. And a fellow walking his dog 2 days later came upon it and said, "Oh my gosh, this whole place is afire. We've got to get the fire department." So he called the fire department, and they came up and put it out. But all this undergrowth was a fire at that time. So it's amazing that it got away that far. It's a lucky thing the wind wasn't blowing. One of the trail junctions we've just come to is a trail that leads right down the hill from the main road, main trail that goes along the summit of the ridge of the mountain. And that one goes down not far from WLTN's tower clearing and joins on to Pine Hill Road. And then you can either go back to where you came from or go to the left, which takes you down to the top of Pine Hill where the first dwellings are. So it's a nice way to go if you're not looking for a great big walk. This way behind me, just a few hundred yards, we'll get to the summit boulder, which is the highest point on this hill, which is not very high. It's about 1,025 feet or somewhere near that. So we'll go on to see a big summit boulder. Here we are at the summit boulder. This is the biggest rock on the hill, and luckily it's on the top of the mountain, so it makes for an interesting culmination of a hike if you're just coming to the highest point of this hill. As you can see, it's a great big boulder, and it is also one of the glacier erratics that I spoke about earlier. You can imagine how much force the glacier had to move a rock like that. But it must have gotten tired and left it here, so we can enjoy it now. So come and join Summit Boulder. Oh, don't the kids love to hike on and climb up that? We've come to another kiosk. This is still on the summit of Pine Hill, and this one deals with the water course and all about how water affects our land that we like so much here. And it's one of the reasons our trees grew so well. But we do have a lot of water, and there's a whole explanation of what we should and we shouldn't do with water. So that's an important sign, and it's nice that they put it on the summit so most people can stop and read it. We've come to another stone wall here in the middle of the woods. Right behind you is the biggest one, some of the two biggest pine trees on this hill, and they must have been some of the oldest trees that were growing even way back when the pasture was here, because those trees are more than 100 years old. A lovely white pine trees. This wall continues all the way down almost to Pleasant Street, so it's a major wall, and it must have been awfully hard to build because just over the hill here, the land gets very steep, and those people who were working on a side hill with these big boulders must have been a very hard job. But they did it, and it's still there for proof. Now the tan top this rock I've named Teapot Rock. It's an interesting location because the trail comes down off the hill, and I wound the trail around this rock just so people would realize what happened here. Well, as I was digging this trail originally, I found all these artifacts from a camp that had been here years and years ago when they logged this whole top of the mountain. And there was a logging camp here, and I found their dump site. There was old bottles and cans and coffee pots and things like that that didn't deteriorate. But it showed that people lived here, even though it was a dry camp. They had to go somewhere to get their water. But they did have a headquarters here where they must have slept the night and went on to work in the morning. So this is called Teapot Rock. This erratic has an interesting feature for the mountain bikers that come down and use this trail system. They go up around this slanted rock and then jump down over the other side. So it gives them a little bit of a challenge rather than just riding on the trail. I'm glad it's them and not me. Okay, we've come down the north side of Pine Hill, and we're now at a junction where you can either go back a different way or bail out and go back to Pleasant Street that way. And we also have another kiosk here that deals with soil and what makes up soil, and the very educational part of what we should know about what we walk on all day. So this is a nice junction we call Boulder Junction. Not that we haven't seen any of the boulders, but this one we had to name Boulder Junction because of that big rock. Yeah, this junction would be the turnaround point to go back to where you've left your car at the bottom of the hill. As I say, this is about a mile loop around for walking, and not too far, but just nice to get out in the woods and have some quiet time. So we'll go back now towards the reservoir. Since Boulder Junction, we've come in a short time, come to another junction. We call it Tusauk Junction. And I've got to tell you the story about Tusauk Junction. Years ago, the two parents returned home from work, and on the kitchen table they found a note from their son and said, "You'll find me at the reservoir, and I will tie my socks in the tree so you'll be able to find my body." And of course they called the police right away. The police came up, and he hadn't done anything wrong to himself, and he was sitting right on that rock just around the corner. We'll see it in just a minute. But he said he'd tie his socks in the tree, and we left those socks in the tree for years, and the birds finally picked them apart for their nests. So we kept the shoes, which are still up in the tree there, and you'll see them. They're behind a little bush right now, but I'm sure you'll be able to see them. Two Sock Junction. A good story. Last month we had a lightning storm that went over the hill here, and unfortunately it hit the only nice big hemlock on the whole mountain, and it blew the top off, which is there to your right, and there's about 20 or 25 feet of top, and then it sent splinters into the woods all around here, about 60 feet around in a circumference. So it was a major strike, and this this splinter is a good example of what it did. It must have cooked that sap instantly and turned it to steam, and it blew the whole side of it right out, all the way down to the ground. It even followed the roots along the ground where it's exposed. You can see the bark is off the roots. And it also affected that big white pine just beyond us. It hit that too. So it was a major lightning strike, and we lost power on the hill here, and it was a major mess. This little turn in the trail around the roots of this big white pine here deteriorated over the years, and people wore it away, and it was poorly designed. People were tripping over the roots. So last year I put a retaining wall in and got the boulders from up top of the hill and rolled them down into place, and made this retaining wall so that the trail now is fairly presentable to walk on. So I don't think it'll ever move again. Some of those rocks were big ones. We're at the fourth and last kiosk on our trail system. This one deals with the soils again, and all the things that happen to if we pour poisons into the ground, and it's very educational for that reason. So that's the last educational sign that the students put up, and it's makes a nice complete story by the time you get all the way around. We're just about to get down to the Pine Hill Road again, where we crossed on the way up. For a map of this whole area and the Kilburn Craigs and even the Dells is available, called Nature Trails, and the Chamber of Commerce information booth has them for free, and you're just welcome to pick one up anytime from them, and that gives you a good history, and also a good way to know where all the trails go. So stop by and ask for Nature Trails. And just below us is the end of this trail, which joins on to the Pine Hill Road, which circles the top of the mountain here. And if you turn left at the bottom of this, when you get to the road, and go just 100 feet up the road, you'll see the trail that leads down to the hill where we came up. So we've made the circuit now. It's about a mile long, and we hope you've had a good time on this trip. I know I have. Thanks for being with us.